测试之前，我们会根据你们的中文水平，把你们分到相应的级别当中。
In this study, we basically want to know why and how self-assessment can help the students to keep track of their language gains, especially in oral proficiency.
Mm-hmm. And I think we wanted to do this in part because you've taught Chinese, and I've been a student of Chinese, and we know that it's hard to develop proficiency in Chinese, as it is in any language, but it's hard to know where you're going, where you should be at, and maybe self-assessment can help with that.
This is my master's thesis, and I borrowed the data from Language Proficiency Flagship Initiative at Michigan State University. So in this study, we have 80 students in the Chinese program, and they took both the self-assessment and OPIC test at least 2 times during the 3 consecutive years. So each time, these students went to a computer lab, and they would started with a self-assessment, and based on their results, they will be placed to the corresponding difficulty level of the OPIC test.
Anyone can take the self-assessment to see what it's like. It's available at the tiny URL that's listed on the screen. So basically, there were 3 research questions for this study.
Yes, the first research questions that we looked at is, to what extent do oral skills self-assessment based on the actual can-do statement measures language gains over an academic year of Chinese studies as reliably as OPIC do? And the second one is the ability to self-assess using can-do statements influenced by students' proficiency level? And the last one is, to what extent does alignment between students' self-assessment and OPIC scores increase after a year of additional language learning? So to answer the first research questions, can self-assessment reflect students' language gain or attrition over an academic year? This table shows that most students' score change in the OPIC test was successfully reflected by their self-assessment score change. So the second research question asks whether this perception varies among students at different proficiency levels. And we drew a scatter plot to show you the result. So on this scatter plot, on the x-axis, it shows the students' actual OPIC test scores. And on the y-axis, it's the adjacent agreement rate. And we divided the scatter plot into 3 parts based on the students' proficiency levels: novice, intermediate, and advanced. So based on this scatter plot, we found that students at novice level, the agreement rate is high overall. But for the students at the intermediate levels, the agreement rate did not show any pattern in this group. And we can see that the dots are plotted all the way from 0 to 1. And for the advanced students, the agreement rate is quite satisfactory, especially considering the number of questions they answered in the self-assessment, because as we mentioned before, the more advanced the students, the more questions they answered in the self-assessment survey.
Right, and this was a really interesting finding of the study because it shows that the novice level learners are really good at self-assessment, probably because the questions are so easy. You can do them, like I can list the days of the week, or you can't, and those are easy to imagine. And same is true at the advanced level. Students are pretty good at self-assessment, and probably it's because they have so much experience in language learning, and they have more ability to imagine and think about what they can do and what they can't do. But the problem's at the intermediate level.
So probably students at the intermediate level, the tasks are maybe a little bit hard for them to interpret.
Mm-hmm.
So different students may have different understanding of the same task. So that's why, although they are at the same proficiency level as shown in their OPIC test scores, but for the self-assessment, they got different results.
Right. So probably in the future, more work needs to be done on intermediate level learners' self-assessment skills and understanding their levels of proficiency. So this is a summary of the results overall.
The majority of the students' language trajectories were reflected by their self-assessment results. And as we mentioned, the accuracy of self-assessment tended to be higher for students at either novice and advanced level than those at intermediate level. And students tended to underassess themselves regarding those misidentified items. And I found that was kind of also very interesting because some previous studies showed that students tended to overassess themselves rather than underassess them. And we also talked about why we got a slightly different findings in our paper. And finally, the study also showed that there was no significant difference between how well students accurately self-evaluate their oral proficiency before and after an academic year. But one thing that needs to be noted here is that in our study, we did not provide any training sessions for the students during these 2 years. So probably it will be interesting to see whether the finding will be different if the extra training sessions was provided.
Right, and I think one of the papers that we referenced heavily about the training component is Chen 2008. So that would be a nice study to look at more in depth to see how that could be done. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us.
And our email address are listed here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.